For decades, Burt Lancaster was celebrated on screen. Yet behind the camera, reports described a man whose intensity shaped Hollywood in ways few fully understood. Presented from a news desk perspective, Lancaster's public persona and his industry reputation often appeared to operate on two different tracks. Archival interviews, studio records, and commentary from his contemporaries paint a picture of a performer who was both widely admired and quietly feared. As a leading figure of Hollywood's golden age, Lancaster projected an image of strength and integrity, yet many insiders recall a much more complex presence: powerful, forceful, and occasionally overwhelming. Industry journals of the era frequently referenced his drive, his high standards, and the strain that sometimes created on film sets. Though modern audiences remember him for iconic roles and polished charisma, reports from the period reveal a man who demanded excellence at all times, sometimes to the discomfort of those around him. This contrast between public legacy and private influence continues to invite analysis from historians who argue that Lancaster may be one of the most misunderstood power figures of his generation. Sources from the era describe a recurring theme. The Burt Lancaster viewers adored often differed sharply from the Burt Lancaster colleagues encountered on set. News coverage from the 1950s and 1960s repeatedly emphasized Lancaster's commanding physical presence and screen heroism, noting his background as an acrobat and his ability to embody strength with ease. Yet trade publications and behind-the-scenes reports told a different story. Lancaster's intensity, perfectionism, and sharp focus created an atmosphere that some found intimidating. Veteran performers described him as precise and unyielding, while younger actors reported feeling pressure to match his energy. Although no major scandals attached themselves to his name, internal studio memos and retrospective interviews depict him as someone who sometimes pushed colleagues to their limits. To many observers, these dual identities contributed to the mythos surrounding him, a performer capable of projecting warmth and courage while maintaining a personal discipline that bordered on severe. This divide became one of the defining elements of his legacy, prompting ongoing debate about the true nature of his influence. Reporters of the time noted that Lancaster's rise wasn't just fast, it unsettled the hierarchy of Hollywood's most protected system. Lancaster's rapid ascent from circus performer to leading man disrupted a studio environment that traditionally favored slow, controlled career development. Within just a few films, he emerged as a top-billing star, drawing significant media attention and forcing executives to adapt to the sudden arrival of a performer who refused to follow the customary path. Period commentaries highlight his refusal to be molded by traditional studio pressures, with some directors reporting early creative disagreements rooted in Lancaster's insistence on meaningful roles. Trade reporters described him as unusually independent, a phrase that in the studio system often translated to difficult to control. While these tensions never escalated into scandal, they did contribute to a reputation for unpredictability, as some industry veterans viewed his ambition as a challenge to the power structures of the time. His ascent marked a turning point, demonstrating that the emerging generation of actors would no longer accept the studio-controlled model without negotiation. Industry news bulletins of the late 1940s reported a stunning development. Burt Lancaster, still rising, moved to create his own production company. A development virtually unheard of in the early golden age, Lancaster's decision to co-found a production company fundamentally altered how stars interacted with the Hollywood system. Contemporary articles detailed how this move gave him unprecedented leverage, control over scripts, directors, and production decisions typically reserved for studio heads. While many praised his innovation, trade writers recorded rising tension among traditional executives who viewed this level of independence as a threat. Lancaster's company became known for strong creative direction and carefully chosen films, but also for a reputation of strict oversight. Reports noted his exacting standards and willingness to halt or restructure productions to maintain quality. This determination brought acclaim, but also frustration among collaborators who found his expectations difficult to meet. News analyses from the period argue that Lancaster's bold pursuit of autonomy helped accelerate Hollywood's shift toward actor-driven productions, reshaping the industry for future generations. Critics observed that Lancaster's darkest roles were so convincing, audiences began wondering whether the intensity came from the character or the man. Throughout his career, Lancaster portrayed some of the most morally complex characters of his era. Film reviews from the 1950s and 1960s highlighted his ability to channel manipulation, ambition, and psychological depth in a way few performers matched. In Sweet Smell of Success, he brought to life a powerful, ethically compromised columnist whose presence dominated every scene, prompting critics to remark on the chilling authenticity of his performance. In Elmer Gantry, his portrayal of a charismatic yet deeply flawed preacher earned headlines for its boldness and emotional volatility. Meanwhile, 7 Days in May cemented his ability to embody characters with unsettling authority. Journalists of the time noted that Lancaster's commitment to these roles blurred the line between performance and personal intensity, contributing to his public image as a figure capable of projecting both charm and threat. This pattern strengthened the narrative that Lancaster's aura extended far beyond the screen. Press reports from multiple productions documented one consistent theme: Lancaster's pursuit of excellence often created friction in the workplace. Though Lancaster avoided major scandal, professional accounts from colleagues and production staff frequently referenced his demanding nature. News stories and retrospective interviews describe him as a perfectionist who monitored every detail, from line delivery to lighting adjustments. While many respected his commitment, others admitted to feeling overwhelmed by the intensity he brought to each project. Reports mentioned creative disagreements with directors, spirited debates during script rewrites, and occasional disputes rooted in his uncompromising approach. Trade journals also referenced personal rumors circulating during the height of his career, though these were often based on speculation rather than confirmed information. Still, such whispers contributed to a perception of Lancaster as a man who inspired admiration and caution in equal measure. Media analysts of the time noted that in an industry fueled by image, Lancaster's behind-the-scenes forcefulness became part of his lasting mystique. Throughout his career, journalists repeatedly noted one unusual trait for a major star. Burt Lancaster kept his private life sealed off from public view, prompting decades of speculation. From a newsroom standpoint, Lancaster's personal world presented a puzzle. While many leading men of his era cultivated public romances or carefully managed publicity around their relationships, Lancaster chose an opposite approach. Archival reports describe him as guarded, selective in interviews, and quick to deflect questions that ventured beyond his work. This reluctance to offer details led columnists to rely heavily on limited, sometimes conflicting information supplied by studios, associates, or unnamed sources. As a result, the narrative surrounding his personal life often became a blend of confirmed facts and unverified speculation. Coverage from the era references his tightly circled friendships, noting that he preferred long-term professional collaborators and a small set of confidants. Analysts observing his career at the time remarked that Lancaster's privacy contributed to the more enigmatic aspects of his public image. The lack of clarity allowed rumors to flourish, not in the form of allegations, but as media curiosity about his motivations, his relationships, and the personal philosophies that guided his decisions. Some reports emphasized his charitable activity and political engagement, portraying him as a man with strong convictions who preferred to act quietly rather than publicly champion causes. Others highlighted his selective social presence, describing him as someone who could be deeply loyal yet capable of withdrawing abruptly when he felt his boundaries were crossed. Because Lancaster offered so little insight into his private affairs, journalists of the era often had to interpret his public actions to understand the private man behind them. This cultivated a lasting impression that Lancaster's mystery was not a manufactured Hollywood persona, but a genuine reflection of how he chose to live, separate, controlled, and carefully edited. In Lancaster's final decades, news coverage shifted dramatically, with reporters noting how age softened his public tone, even as echoes of his earlier intensity continued to shape his legacy. As Lancaster moved into the later stages of his career, a notable evolution occurred in the way journalists described him. Coverage from the 1970s onward frequently referenced a more reflective figure, one who acknowledged past friction and appeared increasingly interested in collaboration rather than control. Observers noted that his industry presence transitioned from commanding force to respected elder statesman, with younger performers often seeking his insight. He participated in fewer disputes, accepted a mix of character roles, and spoke more openly about the filmmaking process, offering commentary that emphasized craft rather than dominance. However, the shadow of his earlier reputation did not disappear from the newsroom narrative. Retrospective analyses continued to revisit reports of his intense work ethic, perfectionism, and the impact those traits had on colleagues. Journalists pointed out that Lancaster's earlier image, a powerful, sometimes overwhelming figure, remained interwoven with his later accomplishments. Even when discussing his achievements, critics frequently contextualized them by referencing his strategic decisions, bold career moves, and uncompromising standards. In his final interviews, Lancaster projected a calmness that stood in contrast to the fiery on-set figure described decades earlier. But analysts observed that the industry had a long memory, and the dual legacy persisted. Some younger commentators framed him as a pioneer who broke restrictive studio barriers, while others emphasized the pressure he exerted on productions throughout his peak. News coverage after his death consistently highlighted this contradiction, describing a man whose talent and drive left an indelible mark on Hollywood, and whose complex persona ensured that the discussion of his influence would continue long after the cameras stopped rolling.